8 signs the soul is being prepared for a major transition. Have you ever felt a quiet tug, a subtle shift in the air around you, as if life itself were breathing differently? Perhaps it comes as a half-remembered dream or a photograph that suddenly catches your attention, its edges illuminated in the golden afternoon light, the smell of old paper pressing against your fingertips. Your logical mind may resist this feeling, telling you it's nothing more than coincidence, yet something deeper knows it is not. In one documented case preserved in the ARE archives, a woman noticed the same small melody playing at 3 separate moments in her day. A song from decades past she had almost forgotten, each occurrence accompanied by a fleeting vision of a doorway, a threshold, a space she had never entered before. This was not merely memory or chance. It was the soul signaling a preparation, a readiness for change that could not yet be named. Life, in these quiet moments, begins to pull you gently toward what lies beyond the familiar. A recurring letter found tucked in an old drawer, worn at the corners and scented faintly with lavender, may speak to a memory you thought you had lost. Or perhaps a dream lingers at the edge of consciousness, leaving an echo in the morning air that hints at something yet to arrive. The evidence of these subtle cues accumulates, almost imperceptibly, like drops filling a vessel, until the realization emerges. The soul itself is readying you for a passage, a transition that will not only change circumstances, but transform your inner landscape. Notice the sensation of your hands brushing over that old photograph, the rough texture beneath your fingertips, and the coolness of the glass frame pressed against your skin. This intimacy, the small details, are the markers the soul leaves to guide you. Each tiny artifact, each remembered sound or smell, acts like a thread connecting you to a preparation process that has been quietly unfolding, much like the current of a river moving unseen beneath the surface. And just as a river carries both debris and clarity, so too does your own experience prepare you for what is coming. It is not necessary to force understanding now. This isn't a metaphor. This is how the pattern works. The soul moves in preparation, subtle and deliberate, gathering energy, aligning perception, attuning itself to the thresholds it will soon encounter. You may notice shifts in your awareness, moments of intuition, or sudden clarity in situations that previously felt muddled. You may even question your own perception, wondering if this pull is imagined. Let me reassure you, it is real. These moments are invitations to pay attention, to notice the signs that the soul is speaking. And so you begin to notice them, the small but insistent patterns, the echoes of memory, the pull of the unseen. Perhaps it is in the way a hallway suddenly feels longer at dusk, the fading light casting shadows that seem almost purposeful. Perhaps a journal you haven't touched in years slips from a shelf, landing open at a page you had long forgotten, its words resonating differently now. The soul has ways of communicating that bypass logic entirely. Your task is simply to notice, to feel, and to be present. Have you felt it too? That lingering sense that life is on the cusp of something both mysterious and vital. If you have, you are not alone. And if you want to explore this more deeply, to recognize the markers that signal readiness for change, consider subscribing, as together we can trace the signs and subtle signals the soul offers, learning to move with them rather than against them. This awareness, fragile yet insistent, opens the way to understanding the hidden layers of life. And it is here, in this place of wonder and attentive noticing, that the first doorway appears. You are beginning to recognize that there is more than the surface of the world, more than the walls of the familiar. It is the threshold of the next chapter, the point at which curiosity meets evidence, and imagination begins to dance with reality. And so, as you step closer, we move from these intimate, personal signals to a symbol that has stood for millennia as a keeper of knowledge, both visible and hidden. A place where the material and metaphysical intersect, where hieroglyphs carved into stone echo not just history, but the eternal patterns of consciousness. The Sphinx. Beneath the harsh sun and the whispering sands, the Sphinx rises, a sentinel of memory and intention. Its gaze is fixed on eternity, yet it also watches for the subtle stirrings of those ready to perceive beyond the physical. Have you noticed the way shadows shift along its pores in the early morning light? How the coolness of the carved limestone seems to hold a quiet energy when you touch it. In one documented reading, an individual exploring a nearby chamber reported a sudden clarity. Visions of life cycles, of beginnings and endings, of transitions that mirrored their own inner journey. This was not imagination. The stone itself, the chambers, the relics hidden beneath millennia, were preserving information for those attuned enough to receive it. The Sphinx, in this sense, is both guardian and guide. Its physical form carries weight, yet its purpose is far more subtle. It archives not just history, but the principles by which life unfolds, much like the soul archives experiences in preparation for a major transition. The carvings, the echoes in empty corridors, the faint aroma of ancient oils used in ceremonies long past, all become cues that the universe, the Akashic Records, and the self are in constant dialogue. And just as you have felt those first personal signs, so too can you recognize these grander markers. The Sphinx does not rush, it does not demand. It waits for recognition, for awareness, for the moment when observation turns into understanding. Like a river that carries unseen currents beneath the surface, it holds wisdom in layers, some visible, some felt, some known only to the attentive soul. You may wonder, as the skeptic often does, how stone could speak, or how a relic could influence the living. Yet here, amidst the sands and silence, even the most rational mind cannot deny the resonance. It is felt in the body, in the subtle tightening of breath, the tingling of perception, the inner acknowledgement that something greater is at work. Have you noticed how you instinctively reach for patterns, for meaning, even when logic suggests randomness? That is the soul at work, preparing you, much like the Sphinx preserves knowledge for those ready to receive it. It is a quiet partnership between perception and intention, a bridge between what is tangible and what is eternal. And as you stand here, metaphorically tracing the hieroglyphs, feeling the cold stone beneath your palm, sensing the silence of underground chambers and the faint smell of age-old incense, you begin to understand. Preparation is always layered, cumulative, and profoundly intelligent. The signs you first noticed, the dreams, the letters, the photographs are echoed in this grand symbol. The Sphinx becomes a mirror, reflecting not just human history, but your own inner readiness, your own alignment with the currents of change. And so, just as your fingers traced the edges of a photograph or brushed across a journal page, you now trace the contours of knowledge preserved through centuries, connecting personal preparation with cosmic patterns, the intimate with the monumental. And yet this is only the beginning. The layers are deeper, the messages subtler. As you step away from the stone and sand, carrying with you the resonance of what you have observed, you may wonder what other markers await your awareness, waiting to be recognized, waiting to guide you further along the path of transformation. But what happens next is even more mysterious. You may not have noticed it at first. A glance that lingers, a song that seems to follow you through the day, a stranger who says something that resonates far too deeply to be mere coincidence. These are the subtle pulls, the quiet nudges that the soul sends before a major shift. Your logical mind may immediately dismiss them. Perhaps you've called them luck or chance or even imagination. And yet there is a consistency to them, a pattern that repeats itself across days, weeks, and sometimes years. In one documented reading preserved in the ARE archives, a man reported seeing the same unusual bird perched outside his window each morning for a month. Each time, the bird's eyes seemed to meet his own, and he felt a rising clarity about decisions he had been avoiding. By the third week, he understood the message without words. The soul had orchestrated a gentle, persistent invitation to notice. These nudges are rarely loud. They are more like a familiar fragrance brushing past your memory or the faint vibration of a string plucked in another room, so soft that at first you wonder if it exists at all. I remember discovering this in my own life years ago when an old diary surfaced unexpectedly from the bottom drawer of a desk. The cover was worn, the edges softened from years of handling, and it smelled faintly of cedar and ink, the smell rising as I opened it. A sunlight streak fell across the page, highlighting a single line I had written as a teenager. I feel something is waiting, though I don't yet know what. I could hear the faint hum of the city outside, but in that moment, it felt as if the world had stopped, giving me space to listen. It was then I realized the soul communicates not with commands, but with gestures. This process of soul listening is a skill you can cultivate. It begins with attention and patience. Notice patterns that repeat, feelings that return at unexpected times, coincidences that carry emotional weight rather than casual distraction. They are like ripples on water, small disturbances signaling the movement of something beneath the surface. In a 1928 reading, Edgar Cayce explained that these subtle promptings are often the earliest stages of preparation, when the soul begins to align external circumstances with inner readiness. They are invitations to awaken, to attune, and to practice discernment. And yet it is easy to overlook them. Your day-to-day routines, the noise of responsibilities, can drown out these gentle signals. But imagine, for a moment, if you treated them as radio signals rather than random noise. Static often obscures the music, yet with careful tuning, you begin to hear the melody. The soul's voice works in this way, soft, persistent, and precise. You may notice a pattern of repeated encounters, a song, a phrase, a particular location that surfaces at multiple points in your life. These are not coincidences. They are markers guiding you toward understanding, toward preparation for the transition ahead. Some skeptics, engineers, doctors, even officers trained to measure and calculate, have reported experiences that initially defy their logic. One documented case from 1947 tells of a police officer in New York who noticed that every time he felt doubt about a decision, a certain street lamp would flicker, not just once, but in the same pattern repeatedly. At first, he dismissed it as faulty wiring. But after weeks of observation, he recognized a connection to moments when he needed clarity. The lamp became a tangible reminder to pause, to listen, to notice the subtle patterns that were being laid out for him. These signals are never threatening. They are not traps, and they are not signs of misfortune. They are markers of readiness, confirmations that your inner landscape is shifting in alignment with what is to come. When you cultivate the ability to notice, you also learn to differentiate between anxiety, coincidence, and the soul's gentle invitations. It is not imagination, though imagination may be the gateway through which awareness grows. It is not stress, though the mind may misinterpret the subtle movement as unease. It is simply attention meeting intention. Have you felt this lately? Perhaps you find yourself returning to a memory without reason, or thinking of a person long absent just as they appear unexpectedly. Perhaps a dream lingers in your mind with unusual clarity, or a phrase echoes in your awareness repeatedly. These are not random. They are whispers from the self, orchestrated by the soul to guide, to prepare, to awaken you to the next stage. If you have ever felt this, consider subscribing, not for instruction, but for shared awareness. People who notice these quiet nudges often feel alone, as though they are the only ones catching the whispers of the unseen. Yet these experiences are universal, patiently awaiting recognition. Take a moment to reflect. What small repetition has been following you unnoticed until now? As you continue to practice this kind of attentive listening, you begin to sense layers beyond what is visible. There is a resonance to life that is both grounding and expansive. Just as a gentle breeze may stir the surface of a pond, hinting at the depths below, these subtle pulls hint at the presence of preparation beneath the ordinary flow of your days. They prepare you for understanding larger symbols, for perceiving messages embedded in objects, architecture, and landscapes, markers of wisdom and history preserved across time. And it is here, at this intersection of attentive noticing and inner alignment, that the stage is set for a deeper revelation. From the intimate cues of the soul to the monumental guardians of knowledge, there is a path that leads naturally from your personal awareness to the great archetypes that preserve human consciousness. The Sphinx, with its silent gaze and layered mysteries, waits to reveal not only history, but the principles of life itself, aligned with the transitions you are beginning to recognize. But what happens next is even more extraordinary, for here is where history and soul converge, where the stone itself becomes a teacher, and where your preparation begins to meet the vast archive of consciousness that has been waiting for your attention. You may have felt it already, though perhaps without understanding why. A sudden wave of nostalgia, a memory that surfaces unbidden, or an old grief that seems to have been waiting just beneath the surface. These are not random. They are part of a subtle preparation, a quiet clearing that your soul initiates before a major transition. Your logical mind may resist this, calling it moodiness, coincidence, or overthinking. Yet in the patterns observed in documented readings, these emotional stirrings serve a precise purpose. They open space for something new to arrive. Imagine, for a moment, a river flowing after a long winter. Along its banks, debris has gathered, fallen branches, leaves, stones dislodged from the banks. As the spring melt intensifies, the water gradual. Lie carries these remnants downstream, clearing the path for fresh currents to move unimpeded. This is how emotional clearing works. Grief, regret, longing, they are not punishments nor signs of failure. They are the gentle, persistent flow of the soul, washing away the residue of past experiences to make room for clarity, growth, and alignment. This may have happened to you in the quiet of your own life. Perhaps a song triggers tears for no apparent reason, or a childhood memory surfaces with startling vividness. A letter you've never opened, a photograph tucked in a drawer, the faint smell of perfume or smoke long gone, all of these can awaken feelings you thought were dormant. I recall holding an old journal I had nearly forgotten, its leather cover cool and slightly worn under my fingers. As I opened it, the faint scent of ink mixed with dust rose into the air, and the sunlight caught the edges of a page where I had written in pencil decades ago. The words themselves were simple, yet the memory ignited a wave of understanding. My soul had been quietly preparing me for change, guiding me through this clearing even when I had not been conscious of it. In a documented reading preserved in the ARE archives from 1934, a woman described experiencing unexpected grief at small, everyday moments. The sound of a door closing, the echo of footsteps in a hallway, even the sight of a child playing in the park. Cayce explained that these emotional stirrings were part of her soul's preparation for a larger transition, helping her release attachments and unfinished patterns before the arrival of new opportunities. These feelings were not signs that she had failed or that something was wrong. Rather, they were markers of readiness. This process is subtle yet powerful. It often manifests as clarity, as if the heart and mind are gradually organizing themselves in anticipation of what is to come. You may find yourself understanding situations or relationships with a new perspective or recognizing patterns that had previously seemed opaque. This clarity is not accidental. It is part of the natural rhythm of soul preparation. And sometimes, just as the river carries debris downstream, you will feel sudden release, a lightness in your chest, a momentary peace where tension once lingered. Skeptics often struggle with this, especially those trained to measure and quantify. An engineer in one reading reported feeling emotional noise that he could not explain. He initially dismissed the sensation as stress or fatigue. Yet, over weeks of careful attention, he realized that these moments of unexpected clarity coincided with decisions that required discernment. What had seemed like random emotion was, in fact, a guidepost, a signal from a deeper part of himself that was aligning with his next step. Emotional clearing is not only about grief or loss, it encompasses every unresolved feeling, anger, nostalgia, fear, even joy that has been held back. Each of these currents carries information, lessons, and a readiness that the soul is cultivating. They prepare the internal landscape for the next stage, much like a gardener clearing soil before planting new seeds. You are not being punished by your emotions. You are being equipped. You are being made ready. Have you noticed moments when old memories rise with surprising intensity, or when a sudden realization brings both relief and sorrow? These are your own internal markers, and acknowledging them gently is a form of attunement. You are learning to listen, to understand, to witness your own inner currents without judgment. And in that witnessing, you create the space for transformation. As the river clears, as the currents carry debris away, there is always a promise of flow. These emotional stirrings are not the end. They are a preparation for something larger, something aligned with your soul's next chapter. And just beyond this clearing, waiting silently, are the archetypes, symbols, and living archives that contain the wisdom of generations. The Sphinx, the monuments, the sacred spaces. They await your readiness, your attention, your willingness to engage with what is both tangible and eternal. And so you move forward, heart open, eyes attentive, knowing that every memory, every tear, every unexpected surge of clarity is part of the rhythm, part of the gentle preparation for what lies ahead. But what happens next is even more extraordinary. The living archive itself begins to speak, and you are poised to receive its silent, ancient guidance. You may notice your body responding in ways that seem out of the ordinary. Perhaps you feel unusually tired, or small aches appear in places you've never had discomfort before. Sleep may come in fits and starts, or you might wake with vivid dreams that linger long after the morning light filters through your window. Some sounds may seem sharper, scents more pronounced, and the world around you may feel almost electric in its subtle intensity. T. These are not warnings of illness or signals of imbalance to fear. They are natural markers of your soul's alignment, the body's way of attuning to a higher rhythm even before the mind fully understands. This may have happened to you in quiet, unexpected ways. The sudden need for a long walk, a yawn that stretches deeper than normal, a fleeting sense of heaviness or lightness that passes as quickly as it arrives. In one documented reading preserved in the ARE archives, an individual reported recurring fatigue and a tingling sensation in their hands. Initially, they dismissed it as stress or overwork. Yet, as the reading unfolded, Edgar Cayce described these physical experiences as manifestations of the soul preparing for a significant transition, the body acting as both signal and instrument for the changes to come. Think of your body as an old, finely tuned instrument. When the music shifts, even slightly, the strings vibrate differently. They resonate with frequencies that were always present, but which only now begin to echo through you in a way that demands attention. The fatigue, the restlessness, the vivid sensations, they are not signs that you are failing or that something is wrong. They are the tuning of your inner instrument, ensuring that when the next note, the next stage, arrives, your body is ready to harmonize with it fully. This is not imagination, coincidence, or mere stress. It is part of a pattern documented across decades of readings. The body mirrors the soul's readiness. Sometimes this manifests in sleep changes, dreams that feel more real, or waking moments that leave you with a lingering emotional resonance. At other times, the heightened senses seem almost like a veil lifting, allowing you to perceive subtleties previously unnoticed. A stranger's expression, a shift in the air, the way light plays on a familiar surface. In each case, the physical signals are the language your body uses to communicate what the soul already knows. I remember one morning when the air was crisp and cool, and I felt a sudden heaviness in my shoulders. I had no pressing tasks, no reason for tension, yet the sensation persisted. As I sat quietly, sipping the warmth of coffee and listening to the faint creak of the floorboards beneath the morning light, I realized the sensation was less about the body itself and more about the soul preparing for an opening, a shift that had been quietly underway for weeks. The awareness of this, even in small bodily tremors, brought a calm recognition. These signals were part of a larger orchestration, a preparation that was both intimate and profound. Skeptics often struggle with physical sensitivity. A physician might dismiss these feelings as minor, psychosomatic, or unrelated to meaningful change. And yet, when the individual allows themselves to observe without judgment, a pattern emerges. The body is often the first messenger, conveying readiness for transition before the mind or circumstances catch up. This is the balance Edgar Cayce described again and again. The physical as a reflection of the spiritual, each pulse, twinge, or fatigue, a note in the ongoing dialogue between your inner and outer worlds. Have you noticed nights when your sleep feels fragmented, or mornings when a sudden heaviness or tingling washes over you? Perhaps your senses are sharper at times, or the ordinary world seems somehow charged. These experiences are not random. They are part of a preparatory rhythm, the body responding as the soul anticipates the next chapter of life. When you begin to honor these signals, to listen without fear, you are cultivating awareness, a form of soul attunement that makes every transition smoother, more conscious, and ultimately more fulfilling. In the quiet of your own observation, these physical whispers become allies. They remind you that preparation is not solely mental or emotional, but holistic. Your body, mind, and spirit are aligned, moving together toward a moment of emergence. And as you feel these subtle shifts, know that you are not alone. This pattern repeats across generations, across documented readings, and across lives. It is a signal of readiness, a quiet invitation to trust the unfolding process, and a reassurance that the currents beneath the surface are guiding you toward your next awakening. But what comes after these bodily signals is even more compelling: the awakening of intuition and subtle perception, where the soul begins to communicate directly, offering guidance that reaches beyond the physical senses into the realm of knowing. You may have already felt it, a quiet sharpening of awareness, a sense that the world is speaking to you in ways that aren't immediately logical. Perhaps your gut nudges you before a conversation, or a fleeting thought guides your choice of path without explanation. Maybe a dream lingers with a clarity you've never experienced, a narrative that seems to ripple into waking life. Your logical mind may resist, insists. Ting this is coincidence, imagination, or the mind's fancy. And yet, across decades of documented readings, these subtle impressions are consistently described as signals of the soul preparing for deeper transition. They are the language of intuition, the bridge between the familiar world and the transformative spaces your soul is moving toward. This may have happened to you in ways both small and profound. One person, recorded in the ARE archives in the late 1930s, spoke of feeling a pull toward a city they had never visited before, an urge so insistent it could not be ignored. When they finally traveled, they discovered a connection, a life lesson, and a series of encounters that aligned with the guidance their inner voice had hinted at weeks prior. It was not prediction or random chance. It was the subtle orchestration of intuition, the soul guiding the vessel through signals too delicate for ordinary consciousness to recognize at first. Think of intuition like the tide. You may not see it rise, but it moves beneath the surface, lifting currents, altering paths, and preparing the shore for what is to come. The body, the mind, the heart, they are all affected, gently adjusting to the pull. The signals may be a sudden insight, a recurring image in a dream, or a sense of certainty in the absence of evidence. This isn't a metaphor. This is how the pattern works. The soul begins to communicate in quiet, persistent ways, preparing you to navigate thresholds that the conscious mind alone cannot chart. What this is not, it is not paranoia, stress, or the random firing of neurons. It is not wishful thinking or imagined coincidences. It is the mechanism of a deeper intelligence, patiently guiding you, often through what feels like ordinary life, toward experiences that will awaken parts of yourself you have yet to meet. In one reading from the 1940s, a woman described repeated, almost imperceptible nudges to respond to strangers with kindness or attention. At first, she thought herself fanciful, yet months later, these small gestures revealed threads connecting her to people and opportunities that profoundly altered her path. Intuition was the invisible thread, weaving continuity through what appeared as randomness. I remember sitting in a sunlit room, the warmth on my hands and the faint smell of aged paper from an old journal beside me. A fleeting image came to mind, one I could not place. I traced the thought back to a decision I had delayed for weeks, a choice that suddenly seemed clear. The sensation was subtle, a quiet certainty, a lifting of tension in my chest. It felt as though the soul had whispered through the body, guiding me gently. You may have had these moments too. A suggestion, a vision, a pull toward a direction that, on reflection, aligns with a deeper knowing. For practical awareness, you can cultivate this sense daily. Take a single moment in the morning or evening to pause. Notice one decision before you act. Close your eyes and ask a simple question: what feels right here? Listen without rushing, without judgment, allowing your breath, your heart, and the soft stirrings of your mind to respond. You may sense warmth, a tingling, or even a quiet yes that seems to radiate from your own being. This exercise is not a test. It is a rehearsal in tuning into the language your soul is already using to guide you. Skeptics often struggle with this. An engineer may insist it is pattern recognition or probability. A physician may attribute these nudges to neurochemistry or coincidence. And yet, when attention is paid, the pattern persists, and the ordinary transforms into something recognizably intentional. These moments are confirmations that the body and mind are aligned with deeper currents, and the soul is using subtle signs to communicate, to prepare, and to awaken. Have you noticed the gentle pull, the whisper of a dream, or the insistence of your gut before a choice? These experiences are not accidents. They are markers that your intuition is intensifying, that your soul is rehearsing the language it will use to navigate forthcoming transformations. The more you notice, the more fluent you become in this subtle communication. The small moments accumulate, forming a bridge between who you are now and who you are preparing to become. And as these whispers grow clearer, the next stage reveals itself. The merging of inner knowing with external synchronicities, where the guidance you feel begins to ripple outward, shaping opportunities, relationships, and decisions with a newfound coherence. This is where preparation becomes active, where the soul's messages become both felt and lived, readying you for the threshold that lies just ahead. Have you ever noticed a pattern that feels too precise to be mere coincidence? Perhaps you see the same number repeatedly, hear a song at just the right moment, or meet someone who seems to appear exactly when you need guidance. Your logical mind may insist it's happenstance, a trick of memory or attention, but documented readings and consistent patterns suggest otherwise. These repetitions are often the universe whispering, signaling that your soul is moving toward an important threshold. They are the markers of preparation, subtle confirmations that you are aligned, even when the path ahead is not yet visible. This may have happened to you in quiet ways. A street name that appears in your dreams, a symbol carved into a park bench, a phrase spoken by a stranger that lingers in your mind. In one documented case preserved in the ARE archives from 1938, a young woman repeatedly encountered the image of a bird in her dreams over several months. Each instance was accompanied by a distinct scent she could not identify, a light warmth in her chest, a feeling of gentle insistence. Eventually, these symbols led her to a moment of decision she had been avoiding for years, a choice that opened a new direction in her life. It was not random, it was a language of signs, a system of guidance that had been present long before she recognized it. Think of synchronicity as a radio signal. The world is filled with frequencies, subtle layers of connection that hum just beneath ordinary perception. When you tune in, you notice patterns and repeated themes that point to unseen currents guiding your steps. This isn't a metaphor. This is how the pattern works. Each coincidence, each recurrence, is a gentle calibration, helping your awareness match the rhythm of the soul's journey. What this is not, it is not paranoia, overthinking, or superstition. It is not random chance dressed in meaning after the fact. It is a structured conversation with life itself, a stream of symbolic guidance, often unnoticed until you pause and observe. In a reading from 1942, a man reported recurring sequences of events, train arrivals, letters, and brief conversations that appeared unrelated. Only after months of attention did he see the larger pattern, revealing a path that aligned with his higher purpose and personal growth. Recognition came slowly, but when it did, it was unmistakable. I remember a moment walking along an autumn street, the sunlight shifting through amber leaves, the crispness of air brushing against my skin. A phrase I had heard weeks before in a recording suddenly resurfaced, almost verbatim in a passing conversation. The timing was uncanny, yet the feeling in my chest was calm, not frantic. I sensed that my awareness was being gently guided and that the repetition itself held significance. Perhaps you have had this same experience, the subtle insistence that life is speaking to you, layering messages until you begin to notice. To cultivate this awareness, you can start by simply observing. Pay attention to patterns, symbols, or coincidences, and record them in a journal or notebook. Over time, these entries often reveal a hidden structure, a map of guidance pointing toward decisions, relationships, or inner work. The act of noticing strengthens alignment, turning random impressions into a dialogue with your own soul. Skeptics may struggle with this. An officer might attribute repeated encounters to statistical probability. A scientist may reduce them to cognitive bias. Yet when these patterns are followed, when attention meets subtle guidance, the unfolding is undeniable. The ordinary transforms into the extraordinary, and synchronicity becomes proof of connection rather than chance. These experiences validate that your inner self is attuned, that unseen layers of life are speaking, and that your soul is not wandering aimlessly, but preparing, aligning, and moving toward greater readiness. Have you noticed signs that seem too deliberate to ignore, moments that repeat, symbols that resonate, coincidences that feel like small miracles? These are not random. They are the soul's way of drawing attention, sharpening your perception, and encouraging you to trust the guidance that has been quietly present all along. With each repeated symbol, each synchronistic moment, your connection deepens, your awareness expands, and the next stage of your journey becomes more visible, more tangible, more real. You may have noticed it quietly, almost imperceptibly, the moments when holding on to the familiar no longer feels natural. A friend drifts away, a habit no longer serves, a chapter of your life seems to end without ceremony. At first, it can feel unsettling, even frightening. Your logical mind might resist, insisting that what is lost must be preserved. Yet documented readings and consistent patterns suggest a different truth. Your soul is practicing a gentle detachment, preparing you for what lies ahead. This is not loss as punishment, but preparation as transformation. Each subtle release, each quiet letting go, is a step toward alignment with the larger rhythms of your journey. This may have happened to you in small, almost unnoticed ways. A drawer cleared of old letters, an email never sent, a me. Mori that no longer stirs the heart as it once did. In one documented reading from 1945, a woman reported feeling a strange peace when her long-held expectations about her career began to fade. The letting go was uncomfortable at first, yet over weeks she realized that a new set of opportunities was emerging, opportunities she could not have seen while clinging to the old. Her body, her emotions, even her dreams, reflected the transition before her conscious mind fully understood it. Think of detachment as shedding old skin. Just as a serpent's scales must slough away to allow growth, your inner life must release what no longer serves. This isn't about neglect or avoidance, and it is not resignation. It is preparation, a subtle tuning that clears space for higher energy, new insight, and deeper connection. This isn't a metaphor. This is how the pattern works. The old must dissolve before the new can take root. What this is not, it is not apathy, emotional numbness, or failure. It is not rejection of life or avoidance of responsibility. It is a conscious, often subconscious, alignment of your emotional and spiritual self. In a documented reading from 1939, a man experienced a sudden clarity after years of clinging to family expectations. The release of attachment did not erase love or responsibility. It simply allowed him to act from a higher place, guided by soul priorities rather than fear or habit. I remember sitting at a small wooden table, the morning sun filtering through a thin curtain, my fingers tracing the edge of a photograph I had kept for decades. The paper was slightly worn, the scent faintly of ink and dust, and yet as I held it, a strange calm filled me. I realized I no longer needed the picture to feel connection. The memory was intact, the love remained, and the need to possess or control had quietly dissolved. And perhaps you have felt this too, that ungrasping of the past and the lightness that follows. To practice this inner detachment, start with awareness. Notice where in your life you are holding on unnecessarily. Observe the sensations in your body, the subtle resistance in your mind, the quiet tension in your emotions. With gentle attention, allow those patterns to ease. You might write a letter you will never send, tidy a drawer you have avoided, or simply sit in reflection and breathe through the discomfort. These small acts reinforce the practice, preparing your mind and heart for the next stage of transition. Skeptics may feel resistance here. An engineer might insist that attachment is purely functional, a matter of habit. A doctor might reduce the experience to stress response or cognitive bias. And yet, when these patterns are followed, the results are undeniable. Clarity emerges, opportunities become visible, and a quiet strength replaces tension. Detachment, in this sense, is a precursor to evolution, a bridge from what was to what can be, showing that your soul is not trapped in the past, but moving steadily toward what is ready to unfold. Have you noticed moments when holding on no longer feels natural? Times when release arrives quietly, almost imperceptibly, yet carries the sense of freedom and readiness. These are not accidents. They are the soul's signals, gentle prompts reminding you that preparation requires letting go. Each act of detachment, each easing of grip, is an invitation to step into your next life chapter with grace, trust, and alignment. You might have noticed it quietly, a subtle shift in the way the world touches you. Faces linger longer in your awareness, moods of strangers ripple through you, and casual interactions feel heavier or strangely luminous. At first, it can feel overwhelming, almost intrusive, and your logical mind may insist it's imagination, coincidence, or simply too much stress. Yet consistent patterns and documented readings suggest otherwise. Your soul is entering a stage of heightened resonance, tuning to the emotional and spiritual frequencies of those around you. This is not a weakness. It is a sign that your awareness is expanding and that you are ready for deeper relational and karmic alignment. This may have happened to you in subtle ways. A friend's sadness hitting you more intensely than expected, a stranger's joy lifting your own, or a moment of empathy so deep it surprises you. In one documented reading from 1942, an individual reported feeling the emotional currents of an entire room during a family gathering, noticing tensions and unspoken desires that had long been overlooked. This sensitivity was not a burden, though it might have felt like one at first. It was preparation, a quiet expansion of perception, allowing the soul to operate with more nuanced awareness. Think of this sensitivity as a finely tuned instrument. When a violin string is properly calibrated, it resonates with even the faintest vibrations in the room. Your emotional body in this stage is similarly calibrated, naturally responding to subtle cues, unspoke energies and relational dynamics. This isn't a metaphor. This is how the pattern works. The more you notice these currents, the more you can move through life with conscious alignment rather than reactive tension. What this is not, it is not taking on others' pain as your own, nor is it an invitation to overextend emotionally. It is not a sign of fragility or that you are doing something wrong. In a 1938 reading, a doctor initially skeptical of this sensitivity found herself physically drained after a particularly charged hospital shift. She soon realized the exhaustion was not from overwork, but from an unacknowledged attunement to patients' energies. By setting gentle boundaries and engaging consciously, she discovered that this resonance could become a profound tool for understanding and compassion, rather than a source of overwhelm. I remember sitting in a quiet cafe, the early morning light warming the wooden table, the scent of coffee sharp in the air. A stranger at the next table was talking softly to someone on the phone, her voice trembling with unspoken worry. I felt a sudden weight in my chest, a subtle pressure of empathy that made me pause. For a moment, I feared it was too much, that I had no control. And then I noticed my own breath, felt the texture of the table beneath my palms, and realized I could observe without absorbing. That moment of awareness, the calm recognition that I could feel without being consumed, marked a shift. Perhaps you have experienced this too, that deep, uncanny sense of resonance with another, paired with the emerging ability to hold space without losing yourself. To navigate this heightened sensitivity, begin by observing your energy. Notice when emotions from others are entering your field and consciously ground yourself with breath, posture, or simple visualization. Practice gentle boundaries, a hand on your chest, a moment of inward focus, a clear intention to hold space without internalizing. These practices do not dampen your perception, they refine it, allowing you to engage fully without depletion. Have you noticed these moments, times when someone else's joy or grief affects you more deeply than usual? These are not random. They are invitations to participate consciously in the energetic currents around you, to recognize relational alignments, and to navigate interactions with clarity and care. This sensitivity, once acknowledged and balanced, is a sign of readiness to experience connection, understanding, and alignment at a level that supports both your growth and the subtle evolution of those around you.